Let's go.
All right, welcome. We got me and JT here, and we're just going to get right into a little grounding to get started. So today I want to lean back a little bit and close my eyes, start slowing down the breath, noticing the sounds that are around. There's machinery in the background, some people talking. What sounds do you notice?
Pretty quiet here in the suburbs, but I do hear an airplane in the distance.
And if you're watching this recording, what sounds do you notice? Imagining yourself breathing in those distant sounds with every inhale. Maybe taking one really, really long breath to close. One thing I like about grounding is that I like to try to come up with a new way to ground every time.
What's different this time?
Like, I had never had the experience of trying to breathe in sounds, like imagining the sound entering me through my nostrils. I was like, oh, that's fun. Yeah, what for me the goal is to just be in my body and be a little slower and whatever works.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, it was kind of the opposite effect for me, Rishi. I actually felt my temperature go up when I breathed in the sounds.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm down to hear more about that.
Mm, yeah, I can't say. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just that was a sensation I felt as soon as I took a bigger
Mm,
breath. Which is I will admit, like unusual. Unusual.
right.
I don't know. Still, I don't know what's different about it this time, but it's interesting and it's something I'll reflect on later on. But for now, yeah, nothing really comes to mind on why I felt the sensation of heat. Uh
Mhm.
this time. But
Yeah.
usually for me, breathing is a cooling and slowing sensation.
I'm excited to have discovered a way to go in a different direction with you.
Thanks.
For now, who knows? Maybe different sounds spring up bring up different temperature changes.
Perhaps it does sort of remind me because uh, just for context, I teach at the School of Visual Arts Interaction Design program. And I'm helping my students develop their thesis topics right now. And I'm noticing several of the projects all deal with sensory in different ways, right? And how it intersects with different modalities and different disciplines. And yeah, it's super interesting to see how um, mindful my students are thinking about just their body and sense because most people, when they think interaction design, they think screens and buttons and swiping. But
Yeah,
I'm very excited to see like my students to
yeah.
think beyond the screen and actually bring it back into the self, into the physical, into the environment.
Wow, that is so cool. Also gives me a tiny little insight into the kind of teacher you are if you're making space for like the whole body as the interface rather than just the eyes and the hands or the voice sometimes, or like the whole body is the interface. That's cool.
It
But
is. It is.
maybe there's a good moment to just whatever you want to say to introduce yourself or like presence yourself in the space today.
Sure. For those who don't know who I am, hi. I am Johnson Tang. Most people call me JT. Small J, big T, just a branding thing that just happened over 20 something years ago. There's really no interesting story behind it, to be honest. Uh, Nowadays, I'm in a new season of my career. So I do have a portfolio career where I am teaching, as I mentioned, at School of Visual Arts and at NYU, mostly helping my students craft their brand narrative and develop projects that align with their values and their skill set to put in the portfolio. Also, and this is how Rishi and I know each other, I'm also a coach, a professional career coach, helping mid-level professionals with transition. So helping them transition into new careers or navigate the job search, which is very, very interesting and difficult right now, but also for those who have transitioned into new roles, helping them get up to speed and move forward confidently. And outside of that, I have a bunch of other creative side passion projects, one of which I just came back from doing, which is helping my mom check off her bucket list, which includes
Oh, hell
visiting
yeah.
national parks. So yeah, we just came back from North Dakota, South Dakota, and Colorado.
Cool. I remember when we first met, I think what struck me was your general sense of ease and calm, or this levelness that you had. That was your kind of like um, lake water. That's what drew me to connecting with you more.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because uh f- for a little while, like this was during COVID, right? So much like many people who had the privilege to do the digital nomad experience, I kind of went all over because I want to just try living in different places because I've been in New York for 20 something years. But I know that I don't see myself in New York City full time. So
Hmm.
question that I was trying to answer is, okay, if I'm not in New York City full time, where else? So I started exploring other places, and my criterias were access to nature. The other two was access to good Wi-Fi and access to good food, but really access to nature was the primary one. So I tried the beach life, lived in Santa Monica Beach for a month.
Nice.
So beautiful, so lovely. Finally understood the whole sweatshirt shorts thing because growing up in the East Coast, I, I never understood that, but now I get it. But what I learned was I'm not a beach person, Rishi. Like as much as I love the sound of the ocean and the smell of the sea, like yeah, not a beach person, but I have learned that my calm place, my is mountains and forests and lakes. So so you
Lakes.
so you nailed most of it, yeah. But mountains and trees too. Like
Yeah, yeah.
mountains and
They're
trees.
all they all come together. I feel like they're a mountain right around the corner from a lake.
Hmm. What about you? What would you say is
Mm.
like a place or environment that's symbolic of your personality?
My personality today is kind of like different from normal. I guess to presence myself, I may as well share. Like uh, I woke up this morning with a scratchy throat and immediately pulled out a COVID test and tested with a very faint line, tested positive. So I'm like, oh shit, here we're here for the haul, whatever haul this is, 3 days, 5 days more. And I knew that yeah, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna bring COVID into the call. We had discussed talking about change and transitions and uncertainty as a general topic, and things change on the fly. And sometimes you go with it, and sometimes you just cancel everything and go somewhere else. So it's fun to be present to that. And so when I check in with myself, I'm like, what kind of terrain am I today? It's like me and the COVID together. What kind of terrain are we? And I feel like over the last hour, I feel the headache starting to creep in, like it from like the I was just on the throat, and now it's like creeping into my head and my face. I can feel like the pressure, that phlegm build up probably. So I feel like a geyser at a hot springs, like building up pressure and it's gonna pop at some point. But also like that really bubbly water, like there's a particular hot tub at a particular hot springs, Wilbur Hot Springs, that I really love to go to, and there's a tub that's right next to a creek, and you can just go out there and look at the stars if you're there at night. And there's a nearby geyser that's like bubbling really hot sulfuric water.
Mhm.
Yeah, what I wouldn't give to be able to do a soak right now, probably clear my sinuses.
Ooh. Have you ever done I mean there's many different types of soaking baths, but have you ever been to Japan and done an onsen?
Yeah. Oh my God. I went to like the city center daily, and I also hung out. We made specific time to go to hot springs places. And yes, incredible.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, for my birthday this year, later on this year, I just declared to the world like, hey, I want to wake up in Japan on my birthday, and I've also decided to wake up at a ryokan in a town where there's like onsens. So that's something
Incredible.
I need to plan out. But yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. When is your birthday?
December 21st. So
Okay. It's soon.
it's soon, yeah. I'm
Soon.
a
Soon.
Sagittarius and I've always identified with a Sagittarius. What's also interesting is, but I've always, according to,
Aren't you on
uh,
the cusp?
I'm on the cusp, but I recently saw a New York Times article where because of, how the galaxy shifts, right? And the original horoscope is, I think, like 4,000 years old. They remapped it, and now if you believe in the new in the new version of horoscope, I'm actually right in the middle of I'm more Sagittarius, which I felt great about. I was like, oh yeah, I've always identified with a Sag.
Yeah. What does that mean to you?
It's and this aligns with my core values. So it's adventure, it's flexibility, it's freedom. So I think, we were mentioning about change and
Yeah.
how a lot of people find it uncomfortable. Um, but for me, it's like the opposite feeling, to be
Mm.
honest. Like for me, um, predictability, certainty, control seems rigid and boring to me, actually.
Mhm.
So I'm just weird. Like I'm the type that likes to embrace uncertainty. And maybe that's why it's allowed me to really help my clients and meet them where they're at.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's to choose transition coaching, which is something I have thought about where I landed on now with my work is just to say that I support people with uncertainty because that's where all the juice is and where all the creativity is needed. But in order to choose a path like that, you had to have some experience with it and also maybe experience enjoying it and finding the gift in it. So I'm curious, like, what's a transition or a change or like a period of uncertainty you went through that you feel really rewarded about?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a great question, Rishi. There's probably a lot, but I think there's no, I think the thing that's most defining for me, Rishi, to be honest, is I've just never felt comfortable fitting in to anything, right? So, for example, growing up, I was never Chinese enough or I was never American enough, right? And
Mhm.
uh I dread like my biggest fear is loneliness, but yet I really love my alone time. And yeah, and I never felt comfortable subscribing or associating myself to one single religion or one single club or a single organization. So I think because I've never felt comfortable fitting in, I've always been in this gray space. And sitting in this gray space for so long, throughout my life has allowed me to really look at the world not as like or, right? Like, is it this or this? It's allowed me to really build up the capabilities to figure out the and because that's where I sit and then that's where I've I'm more comfortable with. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Yeah, at the end, it's I think of it also as like the third way, like when there's
Mm,
um
yeah.
this is like
What's your relationship with uncertainty and change?
I think it is also related to this third way thing. Like for me, when I feel and this I see this happening in coaching too, and also one of the best uses of coaching is like when it feels like there's two options and both of them are suboptimal. Like both of them are you have to give something up. And like that means we didn't look at all the options. Um, And sometimes, yeah, that sacrifice happens, but there's a way that I have enjoyed not being stuck in like it's either this or that. And I think it started for me in an earlier stage of my life, but I started to become conscious of it when so, like 2 years into my career in computer programming and in startups, I basically realized that there was some very crucial information about the world that was missed that was I had not been taught or been shared with me and I wasn't going to learn it being in these corporate rooms and like being in front of a computer. The only way to learn it is to go out and engage and experience it. So I started traveling, and there was a way that a lot of solo travelers I've met, and people, this is more than 10 years ago when in my kind of world, solo traveling was not a big, like not really, it's kind of radical. Like a lot of people in my community, my family's friends, um, career, like peers in my career, like people I went to college with were all like, what are you doing? You know, now people travel all the time. And I actually feel like the whole travel world is very different. I, yeah, I don't even know how to relate to it in this moment, but at the time, what I saw a lot of folks doing was just booking their one-way ticket and just flowing and trusting. Like I saw a lot of people, especially in India, where I spent a lot of time traveling, was just um, I'm going to be taken care of. The land is going to take care of me. The people are going to take care of me, and I have the resources to be in relationship with people, to like create connections, to offer. It wasn't always about money. In fact, a lot of times I saw exchanges that didn't have to do much with money, and there was something really freeing about that. You said you associated stability with control and uncertainty with freedom. I think I had a similar association for a long time where this idea of I don't know what I'm doing today, I don't know where I'm going to go tomorrow. I might stay, I might leave, and for an entire culture of people to live like that, and for entire systems to be set up around that way of living was really inspiring for me, and definitely was the blueprint for the way I approach being a coach as well, and the way I approach my life like now.
Yeah. What do you think holds people back from um embracing uncertainty and letting go of control, right? Like let's unpack that a little bit more. I'm curious
Yeah.
to get your sense
I,
of that because I just believe a lot of I don't believe in control. Like I think we have a lot of illusion of control, but
yeah.
there's so many things. If I look back at my life, right? Like the especially the big things, like meeting my partner or where I ended up living, what I ended up doing.
Mhm.
Yeah, some of it was through things I did, but if I had to be honest with myself, like it wasn't something I intentionally designed, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think to just spend a moment with the control thing, I actually think a lot of the domination that exists in our culture is people seeking control. Like, I think people express power over other people not because they, and not necessarily because they enjoy the feeling of powerfulness, but because um, to not express that power and to not exercise power is deeply uncomfortable. And we don't have, like, we are, especially in modernity, we don't really have any kind of training to be with the unknown, to listen to the land, to listen to the rivers, to I don't know. Back in the day, I don't want to make this about like religion or whatever. People would just be like, "Oh, I'm going to listen to the voice of God," you know. And for me, there's something very deeply related between that and being creative, which is it's about saying, "I don't know the answer, but I'm willing for an answer to arise." And not having the answers is highly uncomfortable for nervous systems that were raised in like these systems and structures that tell us what everything is supposed to be like. Here's what, especially I'm thinking about the immigrant experience and what I know from my friends who, especially Asian immigrants, this idea of pursuing a particular kind of success within the systems that exist through, you know, succeeding at every step and then going to the next stage, academic experiences, professional experiences. And those are all sort of paths that are laid out for us. And a lot of my friends have parents who gave them very strict instruction to follow the path. And so I encounter a lot of folks, especially in Asian backgrounds, who are like to do something radically different, to not know where it's going or to not know what I'm getting out of it is really uncomfortable.
Mm, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, have,
we have a shared experience because I'm a son of immigrant parents, and yeah, they picked up, left their lives, their family, their culture, and moved to a new country just so because they wanted to they want to raise a family, like build a family, raise their kids, me and my brother, and give us the opportunities and that they didn't feel like they can get and find in their current situation. Um, which to me is like the bravest thing, right? Like I think bringing it tying it back to change, like I like that is so much change. That is such a big bet, right? Um, because even though they recognize that maybe the opportunities aren't there, they're leaving their safety net, right? Because the way I think about it um is more so you took the psychological angle, right? Um I like to take a more um biological angle, which is, it's like Maslow's law, right? I do think there's a correlation or strong association between safety and control.
yeah,
So we crave control because we want safety. Um, and people sort of strongly associated. That's my thesis and my hypothesis, right? I'm not a I'm not a psychologist or anything like that, but that's my hypothesis. So yeah, just the fact that my parents um left all that safety and took the big risk, I can see why they were also telling us to follow this path, right?
mhm,
Because from their perspective, that was the safest. way. That was the least risky way to achieve the outcome. But the truth
Yeah.
is, I don't think they knew any other way. Like they were just projecting what they knew, what they thought would be the best way.
I feel like what you're bringing is not just the biological angle, but also kind of a cultural angle. I think that there's a specific kind of culture that emerges in um, people from collectivist backgrounds who then immigrate to the United States and enter into like a more individualistic frame. Um, it's like there's I don't know, there's just like interesting dichotomy that I experience with my family, where there's like a lot of service and like let's create stuff for other people, and then there's also a lot of you need to be safe and you need to get your needs met.
Mhm.
I'm wondering how you relate to that in the context of your family.
Um, I think it goes back to, what I said before, like not fitting in. I don't think my parents got it right. But um, what I love about these trips that I'm taking with my mom is it gives me a lot of time and space to really just talk to her and get to know her and really understand, oh, yeah, what were the things that you had to go through raising us, right? And one
Yeah.
thing I've learned with these trips is that um she recognized she only knew so much. Like my mom is a smart woman. She never graduated high school because my grandfather died early, and she's, one of seven siblings. And being one of the older ones, she just had to drop out of school, drop out of high school, and start working to take care of the family. Um, so she's not very educated at all, but she's probably
Mm.
one of the smartest, street smart, right? I'm talking about street smart. She's one of the smartest street smart women that I know. So, um, what I've learned is that she knew her limits. So she was willing to step back at a certain point for certain decisions, right? Um, and recognize that, hey, like I might be holding my son back if I continue, you know, having this risk averse mindset
Mm.
that I have brought up. So I was very, very fortunate that I had the support. My dad, no, he's just old school, stoic Chinese guy, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, my mom really, I think, was one of the most inspirational forces in nurturing this Sagittarius side of me. Even though she does, even though she doesn't get it, I will say that.
Well, I'm glad that there was a way that she kind of stepped back and gave you the reins, and I think that's like part of the culture that the cultural collision that I feel is happening is also like in my family and in my lineage, parents have been very involved with their kids' lives. Like my grandparents decided for my mom that she was going to get married. So my mom is bringing this energy of like, I'm going to be making decisions for my kids well into their adulthood. And at the same time, they came to the United States where, and my dad provided for me to have an education from MIT. I was earning money at 22 that my parents did not see until later in their life. And then I decided I'm going to go on a path that doesn't earn as much money and isn't as certain, and isn't as like, it's not as lucrative. And this value clash where they're like, they came to this country where there isn't a larger overarching culture of parents make decisions for their kids, but they're still living in that.
Hmm.
I think really had a lot of created a lot of conflict for them, and then between us too, because I was kind of adamant, like, oh, I'm not gonna stay in like a like what's the point of you guys putting all this effort to educate me if I don't get choice? I'm gonna make choices, and what I choose is to take risks. And I talk with a lot of people, friends, potential clients, whoever who struggle to take risks because of, and it seems like really ingrained in a sense of like I was taught that it's not it's not safe, and I want to be safe. And at the same time, there's this longing, like, oh, I want a more interesting life, or I want to be expressing my values more. I want to make a different kind of impact. Those things like come into collision again. And so I guess the one thing that happened between me and my folks is just really a long road. Like they're finally coming around on like a sort of acceptance that I'm on a journey. And they're like, okay, so Richie's walking along this road. Maybe we can walk with him a little bit. At various varying stages of being okay with it. Sometimes they're really not okay with it and don't understand it. Other times they're very supportive. But where I was 3 years ago was like completely just there was no support and there was no understanding. So I feel like it's like a really drawn out process to recruit my parents into some kind of awareness of what the choices I'm making are about.
Mm, mm.
And that's intimidating. I get why some people are like, I would rather not choose the uncertainty because it's easier to hold a perspective of my parents will never get it because that's safer than saying I'm having a longing for my parents to get it and I'm willing to try and face face the possibility that they might reject it anyways. There's more
Yeah.
uncertainty in that.
Can I ask and if this isn't something you want to dive into, that's okay, but what did anything shift for you when your parents was not was not as accepting of your risk taking behavior?
You're asking what shifted for me?
What shifted for you? Like I'm also curious, like whether or not anything shifted for your parents, but because they're not here, I would
Yeah.
rather just hear your side.
Well, I think actually a lot of stuff shifted for my parents after I decided to start shifting my relationship with it. And a big thing was that to just stop seeing them as the enemy and stop seeing that what I was doing was against them. Um, it was more like it took me a long time to get here, but what I came to was a sort of realization that my parents made certain choices and I'm making choices that are also in the same vein, but just are just confusing to them. But that doesn't mean that I'm actually that different from them. My dad moved across the world. You know, my mom got a divorce in a community where, but both my parents got divorced, but my mom was really like the one who wanted it. And she went for that in a culture where that's really not accepted. That's not accepted at all, especially for women to like make that kind of choice and initiate that. So both of my parents are kind of like you know, the both of those choices indicate a sort of willingness to brave uncertainty and
Right.
also um within the context of their communities too, not just like globally or not just like you know I see them still now taking these stretches to be more comfortable with not having answers. And so once I was able to internalize that, it was like I'm not that different from you. We might you might feel difficulty with my choices, but that doesn't mean that at its core that I'm doing something wrong or that I'm like breaking some sort of sacred pact of our family. Actually, what's true is that I belong to this family and we're just catching up to the truth of that. We're all just catching up to what that means. And it gave me a little bit more compassion and it gave me the willingness to kind of work on the relationship without just outright. I grew up around a lot of like other fellow Indian Americans who their relationship with their parents was they're not going to get it, so I'm just going to hide everything. Um, and at the same time, I also grew up with friends who were not coming from that immigrant context, who could take risks or make choices that, you know, um, that their families were more accepting of. And I was like, what can I do to not feel like these are the only choices, right? The only like my parents aren't going to accept all my choices. Um, and at the same time, I don't want to hide. Like I don't want to cut off a part of myself when I'm around them. So at some point, I just decided to start sharing everything. I think I was like 22 or something. I started sharing everything, and that was, you know, I really don't regret it. I think that they've exercised their right to disagree and disapprove. And what I have been practicing in my life has just been like, I feel frustrated when they have an expectation of me. So I'm not going to have expectations of them. Like, why did they need to be approving of everything? Like, that's me holding an expectation. that I'll only take a step in my life if they approve of it. What if I just let them have their disapproval? And I think that actually opened a lot more space for dialogue and connection.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that hits pretty hard for me. Because in a similar vein, I felt like, you mentioned taking the lens of you're not real. It's not about you working against your parents, right? Um, as soon as I started really empathizing with my parents' point of view, um, yeah, I just started practicing a lot more grace. So, um, I don't know about your parents, but my parents, and maybe it's a cultural thing, like they can be really passive aggressive, really passive aggressive. And oh my God, it used to piss me off every time. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, why are you being so passive aggressive, right? Just say what you mean and mean what you say, right? Um, but over time, I realized, oh, wait, like this isn't my behavior also isn't acceptable and it's not helping the situation, right? So yeah, as soon as I started just seeing the world through their lens, um, it felt less like I needed to prove something, I needed to live up to something. It was more
Yeah.
about it was more about aligning on the end goal, which is they simply just want to know I'm taking care, like I'll be fine, right? Really, that's like the end goal. Um,
Yeah.
and I've proven that to them, right? I've proven that to them, and at this point, I hate to say it, but I'm just, they recognize that I'm smarter than them, I'm physically more capable than them, um, I have more resources than them, and I don't need them anymore.
Mhm.
And then, but the thing is, like, they still matter. So that's why I want them to feel like they still matter, right? So when they do these little passive aggressive stuff, or if they're still want to treat me like a teenager, it doesn't get to me anymore. I let them because I recognize that, oh, they still want to feel like they matter to me,
Yeah.
even though the hard truth is I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm self-sufficient. They did their job, right? They did their job. Like end game done. At least
Yeah.
they want it for me and my brother. But now what? Right?
It just strikes me that all of this is relevant to being able to successfully accompany someone like in a coaching context that's going through transition. Because I feel like part of what makes transitions hard is that coming into acceptance about what I don't have control over. Like both of our parents have had to confront, it seems like in one way or another, that they don't have control over how we live our lives. And so that's its own kind of transition. It's its own kind of like portal. And being able to, I mean, it's the final boss, I think Ram Dass is known for saying this, like he's like, think you're enlightened, spend a weekend with your folks. Like that whole concept of like it is the one of the places where it is most challenging to brave somebody else's expectations, or the way that loss of control shows up and becomes conflictual, or becomes expressed as anger, or trying to grasp more control, or and with my family, it's like expressing judgments, and I relate to some of the passive aggressive stuff. And for me, I have just seen it as like part of the journey to learn how to accept this is what it's like for them to to bravely look directly in the face of they don't have the control that they thought they might have, that they were raised in the culture where that control was being expressed, from parent to child. Instead, it's like a chance to grow my own willingness um, to know that I'm safe. No matter what my parents say about me, I'm still safe.
Yeah, yeah. It goes back to that safety. Um, there's this like saying which comes up is coming up for me right now is that it goes something like we don't fear change. We don't actually fear change. We fear loss, right?
Mhm.
And I think it's been, there's been a lot of research about loss aversion, right? The loss aversion phenomenon. Um, yeah, do you have a take on it? Do you think that we actually don't fear change? Because like again, for me, change is
Yeah,
boring. Like stagnation is boring, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I like change, right? I like the seasons. I love fall. Fall is my favorite season because literally the leaves are changing, the temperature is changing, the clothes are changing, and uh, the type of food we're eating and cooking is changing. I love it. I embrace it all, right? But
Yeah.
loss, right? Do you think it really is about fear of loss and not fear of change?
I mean, I'm going to give you another like psychological, physiological answer, like, or at least an answer in those frames. I think that we don't, I'm not even sure we fear loss. I think it's just we cannot always bear the way that feels, the way that loss feels. We cannot always bear the way that change feels. And we as a culture have not been taught how to grieve.
Ooh, now you're hitting on something that's also very interesting to me. Grief.
I mean, if you're working with transition, you must be facing grief all the time with your clients,
Yes. I mean, I don't start out using that word because I think
right?
it feels heavy,
It
right?
brings up stuff for people. People are like, "Oh, I don't know about grief," you know?
Right, exactly, exactly. And I don't know, and maybe I'll just speak for myself, right? Um, Even as I approach my fifth decade, I'm still learning to navigate grief, right?
Mm,
Even in the past couple of years when I shifted away from my corporate identity, as a full-time product manager in tech into this portfolio career, I had to go through months of inner work, right? And really at the heart of it was just grieving the loss of this identity and the title and the power and the rewards and the recognition that came with this career I've cultivated and built up for the past 2 decades, right?
mm,
But all of it was grief. All of it came down to just saying goodbye to this thing and letting go and making
yeah,
space for my new self and my new self identity.
yeah, yeah. I think there's you touched on something really that I think is really profound, which is that every time grief arises, it's new and it has its own intelligence, and it cannot be like it can't be contained or predicted or figured out. So I expect that I will be at the sitting at the feet of grief, not knowing what to do and having to face it new for the rest of my life. So far,
Yeah.
my experience has been that all these different changes and transitions, I mean, even things, I learned that even things that are wanted, like when my parents got divorced, it was such a win for me because I had been asking for it, praying for it, hoping it might happen, hoping that they would get some space from each other and get to like really look at themselves since I was 10, you know, it's like 20 years of waiting for something to happen and the amount of grief that came up when it eventually did happen. 'Cause I think grief it's not necessarily just sadness or depression or longing or slowness. I think grief is also it's just a release of energy. But each transition has its own unique constellation of forces.
Yeah, no, I totally accept that. I remind people if if you're grieving hard, right? If you're grieving a lot, it also means that you probably loved a lot because you wouldn't be grieving as hard if the thing wasn't meaningful for you, right? So I always try to remind myself as well as others, if you're grieving and it's really difficult, that's actually a good signal that hey, this thing really meant something to you in the first place. Because if it didn't, you would just
Mm,
say whatevs,
yeah,
right? So I think
yeah,
I think grief is healthy, totally healthy.
And that's what the longing I have is around is, I said we don't have any education around how to grieve in our culture. And I think other cultures, and there are some great books on this, but there are other cultures where grieving is part of like the rites of passage of growing up and rituals of becoming and belonging. And even I think of like getting married and bachelorette, those kinds of rituals. I'm like, those are also expressions of grief, and we have one expression of grief, which is like, let's throw a big party and like, woohoo. And then another expression of grief is like, what if we acknowledge what's being lost? And what if we say goodbye in a way that feels that we can really honor the thing that's being said goodbye to?
Mm.
And yeah, I just have this. My one liner for all of my shit is people don't want to feel their feelings. That's like it's like what's up with control and domination? People don't want to feel their feelings, or what is it
Well,
that, you know,
yeah. I will say though, because again, because of the privilege I have with interacting with my students who are, I think they're all Gen Z. I think they're all
mm,
Gen Z. I will say they are such an inspiration to me. Um, because they're just so much more mindful, right? Like first off, their even like their vocabulary for their emotion is so amazing at the age you're at. I felt like when I was their age, I was I hadn't nowhere near the vocabulary and words to describe the feels that I was feeling, right? Um,
yeah.
and I know that the younger generation love to talk about the generational traumas from the older generation. There's such
They're
truth.
very aware, very hip
Yeah,
to that.
but the younger generation, oh my gosh, they are so awesome in reading themselves and being aware. Um, so yeah, yeah, I'm just want to shout out to the younger generation
Yeah, I
and that the
appreciate
older
that.
generation can learn from.
I think there's something very interesting about like managing Gen Z people. I've had some friends who like, managers in tech who have to navigate Gen Z employees, interns, new grads, and now, I mean, now they've been in the workforce for a few years. And this story that I've heard a lot, which is like they don't want to work. But I think what my story is like Gen Z is just more attuned to um, like when systems are kind of fucked up and when there's domination in a system. And so they kind of reject that instinctually. And I feel really curious about what that's going to do to our workforce. And, I think some people are like, oh, we'll solve it with AI and we don't need entry level employees anymore. And that's going to help some organizations. But I actually think I'm looking forward to the larger revolution in terms of management that actually addresses these like concerns that people are able to bring and maybe collaborates across generation to create more yeah, I really enjoy when I work with a leader who can just be like, what I want to do is collaborate with my non-responsive teammates instead of being like just passing the judgment of they don't they don't want to work, which also I have to admit mirrors some of the conflicts I've had with my family and the way that it's easy for them to pass judgment and be like, oh, Rishi doesn't want to do a traditional career because he doesn't want to work, instead of being like, what is it that Rishi's actually being called towards? And what is the wisdom of some of those movements? So I think that's part of maybe why that's might be in some ways.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, I think I saw somewhere that never in the history of the professional work environment has there been so many generations working together, right? Like the intergenerational workforce, right?
Mm,
Never has it been like literally people people are working longer, right? Um, but also the truth is there's the power dynamics, right? And the people at the top are for the most part still of the older generation. So
yeah,
yeah, it's not easy for the younger generation. So I'm hoping, and I'm Gen X, right? I'm Gen
right.
the forgotten generation. No one remembers us. It's fine. Um uh I hope that um yeah, outside of all these dialogues about AI and blah blah blah, right? Like I'm hoping that this is a catalyst to figure out, hey, how can we actually embrace an intergenerational workforce to create something unique and beautiful, right? Um,
Yeah,
so I'm
that's an
excited.
incredible question.
Yeah,
Do
I
you
think
want
that
to? I'm like, should we host a workshop on that? That feels really fun to like actually address that and talk about it.
I would. I mean, I tried introducing it into one of the classes I teach, right? I wanted because a lot of my students are designers, so I was like, okay, what are designers good at? Empathizing, right? So I wanted them to understand when they enter and when they enter this workforce, they're going to have to navigate all these intergenerational differences and
Yeah,
traumas and whatever,
yeah,
right? So I was very open and honest about, hey, yeah, there's all of this happening, right, in the real world that's not in the classroom. But
I
it's
think that's yeah,
but it's hard to do in a classroom setting, right? I think in hindsight, what would have been more productive was to actually have representation of all of these different generations in the same room to have the same conversation and share,
yeah.
so we can truly empathize.
Yeah, I feel excited about that. I really feel like this is some kind of hot topic that's not being fully explored in our like sort of like culture around business in the world. Because I really feel like what you said about we have more generations than ever in the same workplace. These expectations and patterns, I think they're actually really thinking about one particular friend, it's actually totally eating him. That he doesn't know how to manage his Gen Z team. And I'm like, oh, we should talk about that. Let's get into it, you know?
Yeah. And there's also I think a lot of times when we think of managing, we think of managing down, right? But there's also managing up too.
Yeah,
Right. Like so I think it goes up, down, and across, right? It
yeah.
goes all ways. It goes all ways. But yes, if you ever decide to host a workshop about it, yeah,
I'm just
let
gonna ask you to have a call about it after this. Or I
right.
just asked you.
All right.
I'm noticing that the incoming head head cold part of my COVID is asking me to slow things down. So maybe we can, yeah, I knew that when we had that call a couple months ago now, and the way you were talking about your relationship with your family, I was like, there's something here. So I think it's fun to weave the relationships between uncertainty, family expectations, and also generational cultural differences, both at home, in the family, and in the workplace. I feel like there's like some juice for us here.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. How would you, because yeah,
I don't have
I
any particular rituals, I guess. I'm wondering, what do you want to say as a way to close out? What would help you feel complete?
hmm, um, I'd love to know what was your biggest takeaway from our time together today.
What I just said, taking this generational, I call it generational activism, but taking this generational element that I've been navigating in my family and bringing it into a workplace and surfacing those dynamics, those cultural differences in the workplace feels like really exciting. Feels like it's an angle, a way to talk about what's happening culturally at work that is different from what I'm used to and what I've seen. So I want to play with that more.
Cool.
How about you?
Um, so I've been talking about my mom a lot, and I think I want to talk to my dad more now.
Yeah,
That's my takeaway.
nice.
I want to talk to
Cool.
my dad more.
My dad always watches these. He's like one of the people that he's like watches every single one of these, which is really sweet. And I'm seeing both
Hi,
him and
Dad.
my
Hi,
yeah.
Dad.
I'm seeing both him and my mom in the next month. They're both visiting California. So I think I'll also be taking some of the like, yeah, just remembering how I want to show up with them and what is important to me in those relationships. To like really be to really be honest with them and also to not have expectations that they have to be someone that they're not.
Mm.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
Well, thanks, JT. Thanks everyone for watching. Appreciate you all.
Bye, everyone.